As every scientist knows, every faulty scientific hypothesis contains a self-contradiction at some point. At some point, a faulty hypothesis disproves itself because either it proves two conflicting things at the same time, or else it proves something that's obviously physically impossible. That means it isn't a question of if something has gone wrong with the Constitution, but what has gone wrong, and what effect it's having. That means every member of the U.S. military who has died since September 11th has died fighting to defend a Constitution that no one can defend in the long run, because it contradicts itself. So, what are you smart, college-educated people doing about that? Just for one example, a habitable environment is a prerequisite to democracy. But nowhere in the Constitution is a healthy environment guaranteed. The Founding Fathers thought it was guaranteed because they didn't know about evolution or thermodynamics, which is why they didn't think they needed to put it in the Constitution. So now, every single day, Americans keep dumping more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and they're doing it perfectly legally. And even if the right to a healthy environment was added as an amendment to the Constitution, that still wouldn't answer the much bigger question of why such a fundamental human right should be considered an amendment, as if it was some sort of an afterthought to how the government was going to work. If we really do have a government of, by, and for the people, shouldn't the rights of individuals be listed first? If the founding document of our country prioritizes the operation of the government over the rights of individuals, then the goal isn't democracy, is it? And what do we have in America now but a country where powerful people prioritize the operation of the government over the rights of citizens? As the saying goes, you reap what you sow. Here's a more complicated version of something that's gone wrong. Why We Fight is a documentary about how the military-industrial complex makes its profits selling weapons to the government, and they depend on the U.S. having plenty of oil to fuel all the tanks and planes and other vehicles they sell, and they've bought up the mainstream media, and they pay for politicians' elections, and have found all kinds of other ways to shape U.S. foreign policy by shaping public opinion. Hence we get the saying, $1, one vote. Some citizens getting disproportionately large amounts of decision-making power is a breakdown of democracy. Here's an even more complicated version of the problem. In our president's book, The Audacity of Hope, he says that if you go to the science or engineering departments of any university in America, you will see extremely few Black or Hispanic students. Well, as every scientist knows, science is the systematic approach to the discovery of reliable information. And as anyone who puts much thought into it must realize, democracy depends on individuals having reliable information. Because democracy doesn't mean everyone going out and voting for stuff every once in a while. Democracy means self-determination. And the better you understand your situation, the more self-determination you have. Education always has political results, because educated people make different decisions than uneducated people. As every teacher in America learns in the course of their certification training, which included me in the course of my flight instructor training, education is not defined by a teacher standing in front of a class and talking about stuff. Education is the result of students internalizing the lesson material and changing their behavior accordingly. To make lesson material personally meaningful to a student, You have to talk about it in a way that makes the student believe you know what you're talking about. It has to be relevant to stuff your student cares about now, and your student has to believe that learning the material now will help him or her to reach goals he or she cares about in the future. In short, education is the process of making your student's brain more efficient at reaching the student's goals. If you're making the student's brain more efficient at reaching your goals or someone else's goals, that's not education. That's indoctrination. Well, evolutionary psychology is a science. It's the study of human psychology beginning from human biology. That means it's an approach to psychology that builds up from a foundation that's universal to the human race. That makes evolutionary psychology extremely valuable to people who care about civil rights. And evolution is also known as the law of the jungle. So let me get this straight. All you smart college graduates out there can't figure out how to teach black people about civil rights, and you can't figure out how to teach people who grew up in inner cities about the law of the jungle? Is this some kind of a joke? So this means that certain categories of American citizens have less access to reliable information than other categories of American citizens. That means our so-called education system is manufacturing racial inferiority, because it's resulting in the people of some races in America having less effective decision-making power than the people of other races. It's not that black people can't learn stuff. All human beings are capable of learning stuff. The problem is that throughout history, the so-called education system has been used to limit the self-determination of certain groups of people. Once upon a time, it was against the law to teach black people how to read. Then it was segregated schools. And now it's teachers and school administrators not bothering to develop teaching styles that fit certain students' learning styles. I'm not here to talk about the politics of race relations in America. I'm just using this as an example of a failure of the education system that President Obama brought up and seemed like he would be familiar with, and a lot of people who voted for him probably assumed he was familiar with, but maybe he isn't quite as familiar with it as everyone thought. What exactly does it mean to restore science to its rightful place and transform our schools and universities to meet the demands of a new age? Well, all that hinges on whether the goal is democracy or capitalism. It is a fact that the education system in America trains students how to be the next generation of rich people. Nobody goes to college to learn how to be a migrant farm laborer. The education system doesn't teach students how to increase the diversity of American culture, except as a means of making money for themselves. If you don't believe me, try graduating from college without ever owning a pair of dress shoes, semi-formal pants, or a button-up shirt. You can't do it. Try telling all your professors that you're not there to learn how to make money. You just want to learn stuff to broaden your mental horizons. I've done this experiment. They'll talk to you as if diversity is for children, and now that you're in college, it's time for you to act like a mature adult and start dressing like the rich people.